So what I want to do is I want to go over break-even analysis with you. We've looked at it in class briefly about how the break-even curve or break-even chart is created, and then I want to also talk to you about why you would use this and what the risks are if you don't, and also when you might use this. Those are the things that will give you the higher level marks, but without understanding the chart and break-even, you won't be able to get to those in the first place. So break-even is, it sounds complicated, but it's really very, very simple. It's defined as the point at which the total costs for a given product or within the factory exactly match the total revenue. It is the point where no loss is now being made, but no profit is yet being made. I want to show you a diagram of me building this up. So I have the diagram and I've emptied it, and I'm hoping if I undo my deletion, hopefully this may talk you through it. So what do we have in a break-even curve? Well, before we even start, we have a title, we have the money down the vertical axis, and on the horizontal unit it's the number, the horizontal axis is the number of units. So here this is costs or revenue. It's two graphs put together, remember. So we have the fixed cost. No matter how many units you produce, the fixed cost will remain the same. So that's why it's a horizontal line. It won't change no matter how many you produce. Then we build onto that the variable costs resting on top of the fixed costs, and therefore they form this diagonal line resting, starting from the point of fixed costs. If you produce one or no units, you would still have to pay the fixed costs overall, but no variable costs, through to if you produced 100,000, you pay the fixed plus variable, i.e. the total cost. That's why that line rests slightly higher. We then have the revenue line, and if we are lucky, the revenue, well, it will always start from the 0 point on the axis, and it will go diagonally upwards. If we are lucky, it will cross over the costs, and at that point, that is the break-even point, at the position where the revenue crosses over the costs. If you produce a number of units lower than the break-even point, then the difference between the costs, or the revenue and the costs, is a loss. You will make less money than you bring in. If, on the other hand, you produce more than at the break-even point, then you are producing a profit at any particular point. Let me just draw you a diagram, just add to that diagram. The difference between the costs and the revenue at this point, perhaps that's 90,000 units, that amount there is the profit that would be made. And remember, a company would probably work out how many units it can make, and however many that is above let me just add another shape. However many are produced above and beyond the break-even point, that is what's known as the margin of safety. So that distance between those 2 points is the margin of safety between the break-even and the actual amount they produce. So that's all very well. We can now see what the break-even curve looks like. I'm just going to take those two off because that can be a little bit confusing. So that shows you what the break-even chart should look like and how it's made up. There is a way to calculate that value without having to do the drawing. In the level 2 exam, you will be given this formula, but it's useful to remember because that way you know that you understand it. So break-even can be calculated as the fixed costs, i.e. this value here. That's the fixed cost altogether. And that's divided by the selling price per unit, take away the variable costs per unit. So we have an example here. This is a service industry. Stacey valets each car for £35, so her selling price is £35. Her variable costs are £5, so therefore 35 take away £5 means that the value underneath will be £30, and it says her fixed costs are £300 a month. So how many does she need to valet each month? It's the monthly fixed cost divided by the selling price per unit, take the variable cost per unit, in this case it's £30. So she needs to valet 10 cars in 1 month to break even, to exactly stop making a loss but not make a profit. That means she has to valet more than 10 cars if she's going to make a profit. Okay, so why use break-even analysis? So what are the benefits? The benefits are that the business knows the fixed and variable costs are linked. The fixed and variable costs that are linked to a product. It means that they have actually stopped and thought about the costs of producing this. If in our graph, if our costs are greater than our revenue, we'll never make a profit. So a business must check to make sure that the costs are below the revenue, that it is possible to make a profit. It means that the business can analyse the costs to see if any are too high or can be reduced. So it means that they're actually thinking carefully about the individual costs. So that focus might mean that they can reduce costs. It can also set the optimum price. So therefore, say we find that costs are higher than we would like, we can then change the price, which will change the price per unit, and it will mean that we can still produce the same number of units if we have changed our price per unit. See, the diagonal line becomes steeper when the revenue is higher. It means that the business can calculate and forecast potential sales revenue. It allows the business to stock or make the most profitable goods. If they do this for multiple goods, they can see which goods are the ones that they should be producing and selling more of. and it allows them to work out a margin of safety. But there are risks to ignoring any break-even analysis. If they didn't do a break-even analysis, then the business does not know the cost of producing and running. So they don't know what these values are. If I just remove these, how do you know when you stop making a loss if you don't know what the costs are? It may be that they don't get a chance to actually look at the costs of raw materials, i.e. the variable costs going in. So they may just buy t-shirts for printing, but if they don't look at the break-even chart, they might not realise that they could think about reducing those. The selling price might be too high or too low, or not cover those costs. So let me come back here. So price may be so high that they will stop selling, or price may be so low that they just can't make a profit. A business doesn't know how many items it must sell to make a profit. So by doing a break-even, analysis, they know that they have to produce a certain number of units. They know how many units they have to make to break even. And without that, they don't know at what point they are stopping losing money and starting to make a profit. A business may make a loss without realising it. If you're just selling things and you don't know your costs, you don't know that you perhaps are running your business at a loss. And you don't know whether you are making a margin of safety. You don't know how many you want to sell over and above the break-even point to give yourself a safety margin, a margin of safety. And finally, when would you use break-even analysis? Well, you would use it when the new business is being set up. You might use it when a new product is being launched. You would use it to set realistic production targets. If it's not realistic to produce the number of goods that's needed to either break even or, better still, get to your margin of safety, then there's where you need to start changing your planning. You need to start changing how the business runs. And the same with sales targets. Just how many are you going to have to produce? If your break-even chart, the number of units of cars, for example, that you have to produce to break even is 10 times higher than you have ever made before, or your competitor, you need to think really carefully. Can your sales team actually sell that many? And this allows you also to review and analyse your past performance. Where were you before? Where are you now? So, with these in particular, these last two slides, why use break-even analysis, the benefits of using it, the risks of ignoring it, and when to use break-even analysis, these will give you access to those higher level questions, the discussion questions of why they should do something, and perhaps even evaluating whether they should. The answer is yes. You have to explain why. You have to explain to your client why it is so important that they do this. And while you need to understand break-even curve. You need to be really comfortable with that and not at all shocked by anything there. It completely makes sense to you. You need to get those higher marks to be able to discuss these benefits and risks of ignoring it and thinking about when a business might use it.